The polls leading up to the election predicted a much different outcome last night. Nearly every poll had Hillary Clinton up on Donald Trump, but as you know, that's not how it played out.
So what happened? We turn to the director of the Marquette Law School poll, Charles Franklin. Hi, Charles.
Good evening.
How do you answer that question?
We were wrong. We were wrong.
All right, thanks, Charles, for coming in.
Good night, everybody.
That sort of sums it up now. Now, we had Clinton up by 6, and Trump has won the state apparently by about 1 point. We also had Feingold up by 1 and Johnson won by 3, a narrower difference. But I think the difference between those two is we saw the trend over the last 3 polls going from a Feingold 5-point lead to a 2-point to a 1-point, and the changes in perception of Johnson over that time that made it clear that race was getting to a dead heat. Now, we did have the wrong winner, but we were close, and you could explain what was going on in
margin
that.
of error you're covered, right?
I don't feel bad about that one. But we didn't see a trend coming on the presidential vote in our last 3 or 4 polls. So there it is more of a mystery of what happened.
Do you think that the issues that Trump voters cared about did not resonate in the polls? Things like mistrust of the media or rejection of the status quo, things like that.
There may be some of that. In the exit poll, they did a good job of asking about, you know, is Trump trustworthy? Is Clinton trustworthy? Does Trump show good judgment? Does Clinton show good judgment? And what really leaps out at you is that when people have negative views of both, neither of them show good judgment, neither of them are trustworthy. Trump took the lion's share of that vote by about 2 to 1 or close to 2 to 1. And so it's like when people had qualms about both of them, Trump did quite well. In a case where you might imagine you didn't like either, you'd split 50-50. So there's that. The other thing is that exit poll showed that here in Wisconsin, about 14% said they'd made up their minds in the last week, and over 58% of them went for Trump. So there may also be this late breaking issue, but I think over the last week, is there an event there that explains that? Or is it just coming home to the party? Eventually, Republicans did in the exit poll vote just as loyally for Trump as Democrats did for Clinton, whereas in our polling leading up to it, we were showing more Republicans not voting for Trump compared to Democrats voting for Clinton.
And this happened all over the country.
Yeah, it wasn't just your poll, it was our polls.
Every poll was
in a way, it would be easiest and from a polling perspective better if I just messed up, if it were just my mistake and it was isolated. But the fact that it's true across many states, and here in Wisconsin, we actually had an unusually large number of polls, and they averaged a 5.8% Clinton lead. So my poll was very close to where that average is. So it basically means we were all wrong. And that begs the question of, is it something about Trump voters? Is it something about how we understood the makeup of the electorate that turned out not to be? Or is it how malleable voters were, so that groups who in the past would not have supported a Republican as strongly as they did last night did move to give him an extraordinarily high percentage of their votes? This is going to take several months for pollsters to unravel, but I can assure everyone that this is the top priority of the polling profession right now, is to really come to understand how did we get this wrong and try to fix what's wrong for next time.
Because 4 years ago, what's interesting is 4 years ago, the polls were pretty spot on.
Yes, and in a case where the Romney campaign had said they were all wrong, and it turned out they were right. This year, there'd been pushback about them, but it turns out they were all wrong. Or mostly wrong, I should say.
And last night,
and to various degrees. We're not talking huge amounts, but still very important. And because everybody was surprised, it made the effect last night all the more striking, because the polls had so consistently showed a Clinton lead.
And you were working in the ABC Prediction Center last night. What was the mood in that room as these states started falling, one way or the other?
Yeah, it's just a professional setup. You're there doing statistics. But I do think what was striking last night was how many battleground states were so close and stayed close late into the night. There's a reason that we were at 3 o'clock in the morning last night before Eastern time, before Trump spoke, was because so many of these states were being decided by a few thousand votes. Yeah. And you just were waiting and waiting and waiting to see where they'd fall.
You can't call them.
Even today, that
Michigan and
North Carolina governor's race that you mentioned, I think, and New Hampshire too. So that was really striking. Normally you have a few battlegrounds that remain close all night. It was really surprising how many were close.
There was a list that long of too close to call.
Exactly.
All right, you need some rest.
I do. I'm going home and taking a nap now.
Good for you.
The picture you had on the Twitter, you might want to...
You think so?
Charles.
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you. We'll see you soon, I hope.
2020 starts soon.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Charles.